Okay. So two things with this I was going to talk about. So first we heard that Marvel reached a settlement with its artists looking to regain character rights, but not Steve Ditko's estate. While Stan Lee is frequently credited as the sole creator of many iconic Marvel Comics characters, the artists he worked with have long disputed that claim. Attorney Mark Toberoff represents Larry Lieber, Lee's younger brother, and the estates of Don Heck, Gene Colan, and Don Rico, and recently attempted to terminate Marvel's copyrights of Iron Man, Ant-Man, Captain Marvel, Thor, Black Widow, Hawkeye, and Blade. In response, Marvel filed lawsuits right back at them, though a settlement has now been reached. The Disney-owned company's response was that these artists did work for hire, thereby meaning Marvel owns these characters in perpetuity, leaving the artists with no right to reclaim them under Copyright Act. The lawsuits have been dropped with prejudice, bringing an end to the matter once and for all. According to both a Disney spokesperson and Toberoff, both sides have reached an amicable resolution. Details of that are unlikely to be revealed, though we'd imagine they've been compensated financially in a way that's made everyone involved happy. However, no settlement has been reached with the family of Steve Ditko. They're looking to reclaim his share of the Spider-Man and Doctor Strange copyrights, though it's likely Marvel will emerge triumphant there as well. Back in 2013, Marvel won a similar case at U.S. Appeals Court regarding Jack Kirby, the co-creator of characters like Captain America and Fantastic Four. That case was also eventually settled. Marvel Studios will release a Stan Lee documentary on Disney Plus this Friday, though that looks set to be more akin to celebration of his life than any other sort of exploration with the artists he worked with were credited properly. Did anyone watch the Stan Lee documentary?
Not yet.
Yeah, it just came out on Friday. So after the documentary came out, Jack Kirby's son, Jack Kirby's son, Neil, released a statement through Twitter, through the Twitter account of his daughter Jillian, criticizing the documentary for treating Kirby, a creator of many of Marvel's most popular characters, as an afterthought. Quote, "It's not any big secret there's always been controversy over the parts that were played in the creation and success of Marvel characters. Stan Lee had the fortunate circumstance to have access to the corporate megaphone and media that he used to create his own mythos to the creation of the Marvel character pantheon." It adds, "He made himself the voice of Marvel, so for several decades he was the only man standing and blessed with a long life. The last man standing, my father died in 94. It should be noted, and is generally accepted, that Stan Lee had limited knowledge of history, mythology, or science. On the other hand, my father's knowledge of these subjects, to which I and many others can personally attest, was extensive. Einstein summed it up better: more the knowledge, lesser the ego, lesser the knowledge, the more the ego." Neil's statement goes on to criticize the credits received when it comes to character creation, noting the writer turned publisher is listed as co-creator on virtually every character created by the House of Ideas throughout the 60s. So first, the settlement. I'm sure they paid lots of money to have the artist go away.
Yeah. Like, we're talking multiple cabins.
Cabins?
Yeah, I just meant like
they could buy multiple cabins with the money.
Yes, multiple cabins. Yeah.
Now we know what Josh wants in life.
Oh, it's so bad.
I just want a cabin in the woods.
A cottage.
Hang out.
A cottage in Muskoka.
Oh, yeah.
So in the Stan Lee documentary, 100%, they like touch here and there on Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko. Like, Stan would give them the ideas and the kind of the plot, and then they would go draw it, and then he would do the dialogue and make it fit afterwards. In terms of Spider-Man, Stan Lee said, "Well, I came up with the idea. I came up with Peter Parker, that he's a kid, that he has problems, blah, blah, blah. And then I told Jack and Steve to like draw it, right?" Jack's point was, it's not really his. In the documentary, they have a phone call between him and Stan on a radio show that was supposed to be amicable at first because it was the anniversary of something. And then Stan and Jack just start arguing each other over the radio about who owns the character and who created it. It was fun, and it was awkward for the radio host. He's like, "Yeah, I didn't want to get into this, guys. Let's go back to the." Jack's contention was the character didn't really exist until I put it on paper, and then that's what makes the character. And Stan's like, "Well, I could have given it to any artist. I came up with the idea of Spider-Man and his powers and etc." For just Spider-Man, I kind of side with Stan on that. I felt like he probably could have given it to any artist at the time. and had kind of the same result.
Mm-hmm.
Because he was writing the scripts and coming up with the stories, but he wasn't drawing Spider-Man or the panels.
Right.
Where are you guys on who owns who's a co-creator or a creator?
I don't know why you can't. It can't be both of them. You know what I mean? Like it's such a collaborative medium that the voice of it is as important as the way it looks.
Mm-hmm.
Like it to me, it's both of them, and then it gets more complex too. Than like, even though those two guys create it, like I think Jack Kirby did the cover, which Ditko did the interiors,
Mm-hmm.
and then on top of that, like so many people that came after that added things that we know about the character now that seem so important. It's a really complex brew to get down to the real creator, but certainly the guy who first drew it and the guy who first wrote it are the creator. I don't know why it's such a butting of heads. I don't get it.
Yeah, maybe it's a bit more of that old mentality of subcontractors work for hire. Like I'm the boss and you work for me, so I own it. I think. Well, this is one of the reasons why, like McFarlane left and started Image, right? That those artists own their IP, what they create.
Oh, I'm not saying that either of them own it. I'm just saying that they created it.
Mm-hmm.
I think all of it is work for hire at this point.
So do you think Marvel is in the right then to say that they own the copyright to those characters?
I wouldn't want to be bringing the case against them to say that they're not the copyright holder.
Well, would that be because they have so much money just to burn you out in lawyer fees, or they have a strong case? And
I think they have a pretty strong case. Obviously, precedent of publishing these characters for 60 years has withstood quite a bit, and it's not the first time these cases have been brought up.
Yeah.
And then obviously, that too, that they have the deepest pockets that you could ever think of. So, trying to out lawyer them is going to be challenging too.
Yeah. But for today's artists and writers, do you think they're entitled to a piece in digital rights of the characters they create underneath a publisher like Image or IDW or Boom or whatever? Like those people, honestly, those companies have hired that person to make them a book that sells.
It's challenging because you can go out and self-publish on your own and own it 100%.
Mm-hmm.
But who's going to see it?
Mm-hmm.
Not to say it never happens, but it's very seldom. Now you can get picked up by a publisher who has some ability to get your work out there, and your work could be a hit.
Yeah.
So certainly, I don't know that they need to own it, but they certainly played some part in its success. So that's kind of up to, I think, it's in the hands of the creators of where they think, when they're putting these deals together and publishing deals together, is how valuable is that ability to get your stuff out there?
Yeah.
That's true.
It certainly does have value.
Yeah, probably at this point, most. I'm not really sure how, are all comic book writers and artists now subcontractors with publishers, or are they actually employed by the company?
No, I think when they go with Image, I think that they own it outright, but they just have to pay Image, a percentage per book maybe, or they need to hit certain sales minimums, or Image is going to get paid, but I'm not saying that Image owns it.
Right, but in terms of kind of like industry standard right now, are you employed by Marvel with a contract, or are you a work for hire with a different contract with different rules of, like, if you're a subcontractor, you're self-employed and you're hired out by this company to do it, as opposed to if you're hired by Marvel with a contract of you're an employee and you get benefits and etc., then I would think the contracts for maybe owning IP looks different with studios than.
I have no clue. I used to see a lot about exclusives and exclusive writers and artists, but I don't even see many articles about that anymore.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay.